A new menace emerges. The galaxy had known peace for centuries, a delicate balance maintained by a coalition of various alien races. This harmony was shattered by the emergence of the Ilani, a ruthless and technologically advanced species. The Ilani, with their superior weaponry and brutal tactics, swept through the galaxy, conquering planets and enslaving entire populations. Trillions were slaughtered as the Ilani expanded their empire with a relentless drive for domination. The destruction of Xeria. One such planet was Xeria. Once a thriving world, it now spun silently beneath the Ilani warship, harbinger of doom. Commander Xander, the Ilani leader, surveyed the devastation from the bridge. His reptilian eyes glowed with satisfaction as he tapped his clawed feet on the metal deck. The conquest had been effortless. The Xerian cities lay in ruins, their inhabitants massacred. The primitive defenses had crumbled instantly under the Ilani's advanced weaponry. Next target, the Ander system. Set course for the Ander system, Xander growled to his crew. Let's see if they put up more of a fight. He envisioned his fleet descending upon planet after planet, bombarding them into submission and enslaving their people. Soon, the entire galaxy would kneel before the Ilani Empire, or so he thought. Distress calls reach Earth. Light years away, distress calls reached a small space station orbiting Earth. Ethan Gordon, a hardened veteran of the Earth Defense Force, EDF, clenched his fists as he listened to the cries for help. Voices from planet after planet begged for aid before being abruptly silenced by the Ilani. He turned to a holographic display showing Earth's arsenal of ships, soldiers, and destructive weaponry. Humanity had faced impossible odds before, but this would be their greatest test yet. A call to arms. This is it. Ethan addressed his assembled troops, his voice as hard as steel. The Ilani think they're invincible, but they haven't faced us yet. It's time to show them what humans can do. He knew the stakes. If the Ilani reached Earth, it would mean the end of humanity. Ethan was prepared to throw every last resource Earth had at the Ilani. This was a fight they could not afford to lose. The galaxy's only hope was that, when humans were called in, not even the Ilani could stand against their legendary ferocity and tenacity. The first strike. Preparation for battle. Ethan gripped the edge of the holo-table, his knuckles pale as he focused on the preparations for the coming battle. Despite the urgency of his tasks, an insistent alarm from the communications console interrupted him. A crewman rushed over and gasped, "Commander, we have an incoming vessel requesting permission to board." A desperate ally. After a moment of hesitation, Ethan nodded curtly. "Scan it thoroughly. If it checks out, let it board." Minutes later, Ethan stood in the shuttle bay as a battered vessel's hatch hissed open. A lone figure stumbled out, its blue skin marred with burns and its clothing in tatters. The alien raised its webbed hands in a gesture of peace. A critical warning. "Please, I am Orcs. My world is gone, destroyed by the Ilani. I have information vital to your war effort." The alien pleaded, its black eyes haunted. "I know the Ilani's next target. They plan to attack the Orcs system. The Kororo are peaceful, but possess advanced shielding technology. If the Ilani gain this, interception plans." Ethan tensed. "They'll be nearly impossible to stop." Turning to his crew, he ordered, "Get this man to the infirmary. I want a full debrief as soon as he's stable." Hours later, Ethan leaned over a star chart, Orcs' warnings echoing in his ears. The Orcs' defenses were impressive, but couldn't withstand a full Ilani assault. A call for volunteers. "This is Commander Gordon." Ethan's voice echoed through the ship's comms. "I need volunteers for a critical mission. We're going to hit the Ilani where it hurts, board the harbinger of doom itself, and knock out its weapons before they reach Kororo. I won't lie to you. This will be the most dangerous mission of our lives. But if we succeed, we buy time for our fleet to engage and turn the tide of this war. Who's with me?" The mission begins. A resounding cheer echoed through the ship. Ethan allowed himself a grim smile. He had his team. As the Shadow's Edge, the EDS most advanced stealth frigate, glided silently through space toward its fateful rendezvous, Ethan stood before his assembled strike team in the armory. They checked their weapons with practiced efficiency, the soft clicks and clacks filling the air. Into the heart of darkness. "You all know what's at stake," Ethan said, meeting each of their gazes. "The fate of Kororo, of the whole Dan galaxy, rests on our shoulders. We cannot fail." He slid on his helmet, the HUD flickering to life. "Lock and load, people. It's time to show these Ilani bastards what happens when you mess with humanity." Boarding the Harbinger of Doom. As the Shadow's Edge drifted ever closer to the looming silhouette of the Harbinger of Doom, Ethan's grip tightened on his rifle. This was it, the point of no return. In the suffocating silence of the stealth ship, he whispered a final prayer, then stepped forward to meet his destiny. The assault. Infiltration begins. The Shadow's Edge glided silently through space, a ghost drifting toward the hulking frame of the Harbinger of Doom. Ethan's heart pounded in his ears, sweat beading on his brow beneath his helmet. The ship shuddered as it connected with the alien warship's exterior, magnetic clamps locking into place. Securing the entry. "Seal check," Ethan ordered over the comm, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. One by one, his team confirmed the integrity of their suits. Weapons at the ready, they filed into the boarding tube. The tube hissed as it pressurized. Then the far hatch slid open, revealing the dim, oppressive corridors of the Ilani vessel. Clearing the corridors, Ethan signaled his team forward, their boots clinking softly on the metal grating. They crept through the ship, guided by the stolen schematics Orcs had provided. Ethan's finger rested on his rifle trigger as they approached the main weapon control room. He halted, fist raised as voices drifted from ahead, guttural and alien. Engaging the guards, Ethan motioned to his team. They took up positions on either side of the door, muscles coiled, ready to strike. On Ethan's signal, they burst into the room, rifles blazing. The Ilani guards inside fell before they could even draw their weapons, green blood splattering the consoles. Disabling the weapons. "Fan out. Secure the room," Ethan barked, scanning for threats. His team moved with practiced efficiency, checking corners and dragging the Ilani bodies out of the way. "All right, let's get to work on these weapon systems." "Move." An alarm raised. But as they began interfacing with the alien controls, a piercing alarm split the air, red light pulsing through the room. Ethan cursed under his breath. They tripped a security protocol. "Hold them off. Buy me time," he yelled, fingers flying over the console as he tried to disable the ship's primary weapons. Fierce resistance. Plasma fire began to streak into the room, sizzling against the metal walls. Ethan's team returned fire from cover, the air thick with the acrid scent of ozone. Wave after wave of Ilani warriors poured into the corridor, heedless of their losses. For each one that fell, two more seemed to take their place. A personal challenge. Ethan gritted his teeth as he worked, the cries of the wounded and dying ringing in his ears. Just as he was about to input the final command, a towering figure pushed through the mass of Ilani soldiers. Ethan's blood ran cold. It was Gander, the Ilani commander himself, eyes blazing with fury. "A deadly duel. You dare to strike at the heart of my ship." Xander roared, his voice like gravel. He leveled his plasma rifle at Ethan. "I will take great pleasure in ending you, human filth." But Ethan was already moving, diving behind a console as Xander's shot scorched the air where he'd been standing. A savage battle. Ethan came up firing, the rounds from his rifle pinging off Xander's armor. The Ilani commander laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Your puny weapons are no match for us. You only delay the inevitable. Soon, your worlds will burn, your people will be enslaved, and the Ilani will reign supreme." Human resolve. Ethan rose to his feet, squaring his shoulders. "You underestimate us, Gander. Humanity doesn't break. We don't surrender. We fight, no matter the odds, and we will fight you to our last breath." With a roar, Ethan charged forward, firing as he went. Xander met him head-on, and they clashed in a brutal melee, armored fists and rifle butts striking flesh and bone. A fierce struggle. Ethan ducked under a sweeping strike and drove his fist into Xander's midsection. The Ilani commander grunted but didn't fall. Xander's retaliatory kick sent Ethan flying, his rifle clattering away. Xander loomed over him, bleeding from a dozen wounds but still standing. The final blow. "Any last words, human?" Xander sneered. Ethan spat blood, a savage grin on his lips. "Just two," he said. "You lose." With a final, desperate lunge, he tackled Xander, bearing him to the ground. They grappled, straining against each other's strength, until Ethan managed to wrap his arm around Xander's throat. He squeezed with every ounce of power he had left, teeth bared in a silent snarl. Xander thrashed and clawed at him, but Ethan held on, spots dancing in his vision. Finally, with a shuddering gasp, the Ilani commander went limp, securing victory. Ethan released his hold, panting, and staggered to his feet. "Commander, the weapons are down." Mia's shout cut through the haze of pain and exhaustion. Ethan looked up to see the view screens filled with the flashes of human ships dropping out of warp, missiles, and laser fire streaking toward the harbinger of doom. A hasty retreat. "Fall back to the shadow's edge now," Ethan ordered, scooping up his rifle. His team disengaged from the Ilani forces, fighting a running battle back to their boarding tube. Plasma bolts sizzled past Ethan's helmet as he covered their retreat, the last to step into the airlock as the shadow's edge detached from the crippled Ilani warship. The battle rages on. Ethan allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. They had struck a blow against the invaders, shown them that humanity would not go quietly into the night. But the battle was far from over. As the shadow's edge streaked away from the harbinger of doom, Ethan watched the human fleet surging forward to engage the Ilani forces. Human fleet engages. Ships clashed in a dazzling exchange of fire, missiles, and energy beams, crisscrossing the void. The human vessels, outfitted with cutting-edge targeting systems and powerful armaments, held their own against the formidable Ilani warships. Ethan docked with his flagship, the Resolute, and raced to the bridge. He took command, barking orders as he coordinated the human counterattack. Targeting weak points. Target their critical systems, engines, weapons, shields. Hit them with everything we've got, Ethan commanded. The fleet responded with deadly precision, exploiting the weaknesses laid bare by the intelligence gleaned from the harbinger of doom. Ilani ships buckled and burst under the onslaught, their hulls rent by explosions. The once invincible alien armada began to crumble. A new threat. But the Ilani had one last card to play. A monstrous construct detached from their fleet, a planet killer bristling with world-shattering weaponry. Its power core thrummed with an ominous glow as it began to charge, the energy readings spiking to terrifying heights. A desperate plan. "Sir," a sensor officer cried, "that thing's going critical. If it fires, it'll wipe out half the system." Ethan finished grimly, "including us and the Kororo." He stared at the tactical display, his mind racing. There was only one way to stop this. A cold certainty settled over him as he opened a comm channel to the fleet. "The ultimate sacrifice. This is Commander Gordon. I need volunteers for a one-way trip. We're going to take out that super weapon from the inside." His second-in-command, Lena Hartman, caught his eye as he turned to board the captured Ilani shuttle that would be their infiltration craft and their tomb. "Farewell, Ethan." Her voice was tight with emotion. "I should be going with you." He gripped her shoulder. "I need you here, Lena. The fleet is yours now. Give them hell for me." She nodded, jaw clenched, and stepped back. The final mission. Ethan marched into the shuttle, his team falling in behind him. As the hatch sealed and a craft lifted off, he closed his eyes for a moment, steeling himself. This was it. The 0 hour, The endgame. The shuttle knifed through the chaos of the battle, zeroing in on the looming shape of the Ilani superweapon. Its outer defenses were formidable, batteries of cannons and dense thickets of point defense turrets. The shuttle juked and jinked, narrowly evading streams of plasma fire that stitched the void around them. Infiltration. They hurtled into an open hangar bay, the shuttle skidding and sparking across the deck. The hatch blew, and Ethan's team poured out, weapons spitting death. Ilani soldiers fell before their ruthless advance, the deck growing slick with blood. Ethan led them deeper into the bowels of the weapon, following the schematics they'd stolen. Every second counted now. The power readings were climbing fast. Setting the charges. At last, they'd reached the central core, a seething maelstrom of exotic energies. Ethan and his team set to work, planting demolition charges at critical junctures, sweat streaking their faces in the searing heat. Alarms shrieked, and more Ilani forces flooded in, plasma bolts stitching the air. A brutal fight. Hold them off. Ethan roared to his team, fingers flying over the detonator keypad. A desperate firefight erupted, Ethan's warriors fighting with the ferocity of the doomed. One by one, they fell, buying him precious seconds. He armed the last charge and whirled, his rifle bucking in his hands as an Ilani bore down on him, its eyes glinting with hate, weapon blazing. Ethan felt the searing kiss of plasma across his ribs. He didn't stop firing until the alien crumpled, smoke curling from its shattered armor. A narrow escape. Clear, Ethan bellowed, his voice hoarse. The survivors of his team disengage, fighting a brutal rearguard action as they fell back to the shuttle. Ethan was the last aboard, his armor scorched and dented, his body battered but unbowed. As the shuttle blasted free of the superweapon, Ethan keyed the detonator. Victory. A series of massive explosions ripped through the Ilani construct, tearing it apart from within. It detonated in a blinding flash, the shock wave buffeting the shuttle and sending it tumbling. In the ensuing silence, Ethan dragged himself to the cockpit viewport. Beyond, the remnants of the Ilani fleet were in full retreat, fleeing before the victorious human onslaught. A fierce grin split Ethan's blood-streaked face. They had done it. The Ilani were broken, their doomsday weapon destroyed. The galaxy would live to see another dawn. The cost of victory. Returning to the fleet. The captured Ilani shuttle shuddered as it penetrated the superweapon's outer defenses, plasma fire splashing against its shields. Inside, Ethan and his strike team checked their weapons, adrenaline pumping through their veins. Brace for impact, the pilot shouted, wrenching the controls. The shuttle careened into the hangar bay, sparks flying as it skidded across the deck. A fierce firefight. The team burst from the hatch, guns blazing, cutting down the first wave of Ilani guards. They'd fought their way into the bowels of the superweapon, following the stolen schematics. The corridors were a labyrinth, echoing with the clash of weapons fire and the snarls of alien warriors. Ethan led from the front, his rifle spitting death, his team moving with practiced precision, leapfrogging from cover to cover, watching each other's backs. The horrifying discovery. As they pushed deeper, the resistance intensified. Ilani shock troops poured into the corridors, their armor bristling with advanced weaponry. Inch by bloody inch, they battled ahead, the air growing thick with the stench of ozone and burned flesh. Ethan's armor was pocked with scorch marks, his face streaked with sweat and grime. Suddenly, they broke into a vast chamber, its walls lined with pulsing conduits and glowing pods. Living batteries. Ethan's eyes widened in horror as he realized what he was seeing. Each pod contained a prisoner, their bodies wired into the superweapon's power system. My God, Sergeant Reynolds breathed. They're using them as living batteries. Change of plans. Change of plans, Ethan barked. Reynolds, take your squad and get those prisoners out. The rest of you with me. We're taking this thing down. At last, they'd reached the core, a seething maelstrom of dark energy. Ethan and his men fanned out, planting demolition charges at key structural points. The countdown began, the seconds ticking away. The Guardian emerges. A roar shook the chamber. A hulking figure emerged from the shadows, an Ilani warrior clad in heavily armored plating. Its eyes glowed with malevolent energy, the super weapons guardian. It lunged at Ethan, moving with blurring speed. He rolled aside, his rifle already up and firing, but the rounds pinged off the Guardian's armor like hail. A desperate fight. The Guardian backhanded Ethan across the room, pain exploding through his body. His team swarmed the Guardian, unleashing a hail of weapons fire. It shrugged off the barrage, its own weapons glowing hot as it returned fire. Men screamed and fell. The stench,